Next time you get in your truck, what will you reflect on? Will it be the boots that got someone back on their feet? The food that brought friends and family together? The gas that fueled vacations? The lumber that built brand new homes? Or the helmets that protected dreams? You deliver it all. That's why we created the all-new Mac Anthem, to support the drivers who support us. The all-new Mac Anthem, because you drive us.
A New York-based LTL carrier was running on decades-old mainframe technology. Delivery volumes swung wildly from one day to the next, and freight accuracy was running 10 points lower than reported. A few years ago, Nathaniel Klein joined his father-in-law's business, Sun Logistics, and developed what he calls the Brain, a custom-built AI system slashing delivery returns by more than 50% and driving dock output up by 20%. Welcome to CCJ Innovators. I'm CCJ editor Pamela De Leon. In this series, we profile carriers and fleets that have found innovative ways to overcome trucking's challenges. Go ahead and subscribe, and let's find out what makes Sun Logistics this month's innovator. I read an article about how Sun Logistics uses AI, machine learning, and other technology on its operations. And I'm particularly interested in how the company is using computer-driven decisions for routing and routes. So if you can elaborate on that, what problem was Sun Logistics looking to solve when it developed those tools?
So a few things. So I'll give you first 30,000-foot overview of who we are and why we're trying to achieve those things. So my background is I spent my first 20 years in private equity, the first 10 on investing, the last 10 going into companies, being an executive and being like, hey, fix these problems or improve the company or grow it. That's what I actually enjoyed the most, was hands-on and building real companies. And a few years back, between my next company I was about to take over, my father-in-law said, hey, I think we need to just migrate and update our system slightly, maybe take a look. And I was 3 months between gigs, so I said, sure. I was about to become a CEO somewhere else. And I said, sure, not a problem. I said, you don't pay me, so I'll tell you the truth. And sure enough, after a month and a half, I gave him a report after sitting with everything, all the systems, all the people. I said, you make money besides yourself. You're very effective, but very inefficient. So before we even changed any technology, anything, I reviewed all the processes. And there's many things of inefficiencies with the processes. I said, look, LTL is an industry where everyone says it's always been done this way and that's why we do it. And to me, that is the biggest opportunities for change. And so, I changed just how we couldn't hit cutoff times. I said, no, we have to hit cutoff times. And, one change in the outbound, me staying overnight a few times, sure enough, after a week and a half, we hit it and resulted in reducing hours of the dock by 40 hours a week, which, significantly adds up over a year. The next day, my father-in-law wrote an email to the company saying, going forward, everyone reports to Nathaniel. He runs the company now. Not exactly what I wanted, but I embraced it because, all right, here's a challenge, whatever it be. And so a few years later, I'm still here. And so when I did that, I said, all right, let's put this company on a roadmap for, yes, it's been around for 20, 30 years, 25 or so years, this version of it. But how do we last forever or for the time being? There's a lot of adaptation that is required now. And so first I looked at, after we analyzed all the processes, it was the systems and the people. The systems were archaic, but was no different than most trucking companies. So it was on an AS400, green screens. And I said, well, just because everyone else in this industry uses it doesn't mean we should use it. So we reviewed a bunch of our core platform via TMS and our cloud. So we had nothing cloud. Everything was on premise. So for the next few months or year, we migrated everything to the cloud, brought a new TMS. So the first thing we brought on was a TMS, which was carrier logistics. So what we do is, just like any vertical software, and I've done this before, is we actually pull all the data from there and bring it into our own data warehouse, which we have in Microsoft Azure. And in there, that is where we have our brain, I'll call it. And in our brain, we bring all data from our other services we use. For example, we have Paycom, we have other platforms that come in there, and we're able to bring all the data together and say, okay, what can we do with this that can drive results, for us, service levels, everything that matters. And so with this transactional data, you can't do that. But however, if you're able to put it into a system and have a brain, you can analyze it and say, okay, I see the traffic is heavier on Tuesdays in this region. We need to get our drivers out earlier, right? Because we also discovered, looking at the data, almost all docks in our New York or Miami region closed for delivery around 2, 3 o'clock. So you try to deliver it afterwards, the returns increased, even though they said they were open to 5 o'clock. The data was saying this. And before I get a little further into details, just to tell you, Sun Logistics is an LTL company, so we do last and first mile. However, we're a little different. We work mostly, almost 99.9%, with the largest carriers in the country. Mm-hmm. And so we do their last and first mile in New York City region, as well as the South Florida region. Most of them say they have facilities in the region. They don't, or they might, but we do their New York City, the boroughs, Long Island, the Hamptons, mm-hmm. Westchester for them, because there's a lot of friction in this region. And people don't want to do it. So it's a huge barrier of entry. We also have real estate we own right in Queens. So it allows us to have that capability to do the last and first mile. And so we built a data warehouse. We collect a lot of data. Some of it we discovered is useless. Some we discovered is meaningful. We've also determined what drivers are best in certain regions versus a driver might be great in New York City, Manhattan or Brooklyn, but may not be great in Nassau. And the data was providing this to us to say, okay, this is your information. Now we're enabling the operators, the management to be able to utilize this and make better decisions. This goes down to your first question is routing. We've taken all the transactional data, and even though our carrier logistics has some routing in it, what we did was, okay, we're going to tell the best routing. So a few things we wanted to do is, one is remove as much oscillation from outbound, inbound. So what I'm saying is that if one day you have, say, 600 P&D, and the next day you have 400, and the next day you have 800, that oscillation creates cost because you might have to staff up for 800 bills, but the next day it's 400 bills. So one of the things we put into our system is, how do we make it, say, 600 bills every day? And how do we also forecast out how much volume is going to be coming here? So that is where we've used AI across multiple platforms. One part of the platform is making appointments. We use, text message AI to identify what days are best for our appointments. We have that in the system. After we make the appointment, so we have around New York City, 45% of our freight requires an appointment. So if we know, and we can forecast, which we have forecasting, we have a neural network we've built here of how much freight we're going to be delivering on a normal day. We're able to determine, okay, say we're going to have 400 bills for a delivery that don't need an appointment, and we know we're going to average over the week pay 700 bills. We need an appointment 300 bills a day. So we maintain that 700 bill count. The next day we know it's going to be around 500, so we're going to appoint 200 bills. And with that, we're also putting it to where we know we're not going to overload the space count we have on the trailers themselves. So we've identified every zip code, how many pallets go out. It might be 1.2 pallets toward this zip code. And I'll call our AI system has identified that, and we feed it back into our TMS for our routes on a daily basis. And that's really helped us produce returns, increase density, which is really what margin drives, because the more density you have, the more deliveries you can do in a smaller area and the more productivity you have. So increase margins, increase service level, and for both our our large carriers as well as the customer and consignee, the shipper and consignee ultimately. So those are things that why we're doing it and how we're doing it. So, we use multiple different models to help us build. Some of it is machine learning, because machine learning is used to determine, hey, what is happening in the past and how we use it. Neural networks to determine forecasting, and then AI to help us plan better. So those are different features we're using, and then push it back into carrier logistics of what we want to do. And within carrier logistics, they also have some features we turn on is of optimizing some routes. So it's going to determine that, hey, these are the 10 stops the driver's going to make. This is the best order. We also measure traffic on a daily basis. So, for example, I have every day, multiple times a day, I have a Google API that measures the traffic on, for example, our 10 most traveled routes. For example, it might be going to Manhattan. It's very popular for us. Going to Montauk, just knowing that traffic route. Going to Westchester. And it brings back into an index for us. So it might say the index today is 1.54, meaning it's 1.54 times greater traffic than it normally was at that time on the previous day. So it allows us to understand is, hey, don't push as much on that trailer that day because guess what? You might need 2 drivers to go there to maintain your service level because there's too much traffic. That's the type of data we're using to maintain our service, but also know where we could push heavier because there might be less traffic. Those type of things we're implementing and using to determine, hey, how to be the best of the best. So that's what we're doing.
You mentioned that the company has built like a brain on top of carrier logistics software. I'm just wondering, how much work does the brain do? What's its major task compared to the other systems that the company is using?
So we also have other products that are like a partner for carrier logistics, the Cortex, which is what our drivers use for their tablets. So part of it is we also work with them and give them code back. So sometimes it's in our own system. For example, let me walk you through what we did with the Cortex in the last 6 months. All our dock workers take pictures of the freight, and they then have to determine if there's an exception or not. But every dock worker is different. And like one might say that's an exception, one might say it's not. I said, why can't we standardize this? So I built in this one, as I said, each platform, we use different AI. For this one, I used Gemini and determined, okay, we can analyze every picture and it's going to determine exactly if there's an exception or if it's clean, and writes out exactly it every day. So we're removing almost all humans from writing exceptions, and is now standardized. The zebras that take the pictures, the scanners, will determine, and every morning we have reports of every single exception that is automated and sent straight to our partners of all the exceptions. And we could have built that all on our side, but I thought it would be helpful for our partners to have this code. And, honestly, we built it together. They didn't charge us anything. I said, yeah, if you want to at some point sell it yourself, that's fine. Yes, it's a competitive advantage if we kept it in-house. We do keep a lot of stuff in-house, but I also think it's good to work with your partners to make them stronger as well.
That's really a cool competitive edge to have. Can you share measurable results so far from I guess, the Sun Logistics brain? What results have you guys seen? What's any impressive return rate? Or, can you share any traction or metrics to show its impact?
Yes, so our return rate has dropped over 50% over the last 2.5 years. So returns are expensive, right? Because you don't get paid often. Some of them are delivery, but often we lose money on returns. So by reducing returns by 50%, that's an easy KPI to measure. I'll also say bills per hour on our dock have increased as well, right? So to us, that's increased over 20%. So our dock is moving faster, more efficiently, so we're more effective and efficient at the same time. We have less returns, less OS&D because we're touching it less, and the pictures we're taking, which is one of the reasons I think to speed up our dock even faster this year, I expect our bills per hour to increase another 10% because they no longer will have to type in what's going on dock. Our dock is completely paperless. So most docks you go to, they have paper. You come to our dock, there is no paper. Everything is fully electronic. We also QR code all our freight. So we receive freight that's like barcodes, it's dirty. We color all our customers. So we have multiple customers at each terminal. We give each customer their own color QR code. It's like 4x6 shipping label so that we can first identify it by color. It's easier for the dock worker, as well as the QR code now allows us, because so much freight has so many barcodes on it. It's like, what do you scan? Right? So we remove the whole, what do you scan? Just look for the QR code we applied, and the whole dock is paperless from there. And we can follow the freight where it's going. One last thing is we actually have deployed, we're probably the first LTL company. Once again, since we're fully paperless and fully digital throughout from beginning to end, versus a lot of companies are digital, then they enter it, then they take it out of the system and put it back in the system. We're fully digital throughout the whole life cycle of a freight, that we have robots, AMRs, autonomous moving robots, moving around freight in our Miami facility.
That's it for this installment of CCJ Innovators. Check out ccjdigital.com for more trucking content from all of our editors. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell so you'll never miss a post from CCJ.